is a ton of information on why you should participate. We'll start out with that, but we also have some pretty good insight on reasons why people don't.
Creates this atmosphere that it breaks down walls and allows you to build relationship with the whole class. Once it started, you're noticing, again, you're observing, you're not just playing a game and shut off your observation skills.
I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Hope you don't forget to add that out. Welcome, physical educators. This is Thinking PE.
Because Phi-Ed is more than just fun and games.
I'm Stacy Nelson.
And I'm Jamie Seneca.
And it's our goal to dig deeper beyond the activities that make your class awesome.
So buckle up and join us on this journey.
Welcome to another edition of Thinking PE. Jamie, we're back. What are you thinking about today?
Well, you know what I was thinking is I was actually kind of scrolling through social media, and I was in one of the Facebook groups, and I saw a post that was discussing participation in class, teacher participation, and whether or not you should. And it was a simple post by the gentleman's name was Jeff Fredrickson, and he was in the Elementary Phi-Ed Teachers Facebook group, and there's about 21,000 members in that group, and he got over 250 comments just on the subject of should you participate in class. And I just found it fascinating. I thought it'd be great to discuss.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about doing a Thinking PE podcast, usually our purpose, the reason we named this Thinking PE is to get us to think about a topic, not necessarily to come up with a right or wrong or who's better, who's worse, or whatever. I want to make that clear up front, because we're going to talk about some kind of polar opposite views on this in some ways, and our purpose here is not to show one is right or one another. We each have our own view, and so do the other people on this group.
Well, and that's where, go ahead. I would say that's really where it stemmed from, because as I scrolled through those comments, I took a quick tally, and it was like 95% of the comments were of people that participate in class, whether it's fully, partially, most of the time. There was a few comments here and there of people that don't participate, but the comments that I read of people that don't participate, it was actually fascinating, and just a different angle, a different way to think about it. And I thought that was, like you said, there's two opposites, but there's so much information in the middle.
Okay. And another thing I want to just put out there as a possibility, when it's so slanted like that, it's possible that people that are reading all these positive comments, if they don't participate, they may have just chosen not to chime in, just because I know I felt that way before. If I have kind of a differing view, but everything I read is all going one direction, I don't want to be that guy that's going to put himself out there. So there might be more out there that don't participate, that just didn't feel they wanted to, shake the cage a little bit at all. I don't know.
Yeah. So long story short is there is a ton of information on why you should participate. We'll start out with that, but we also have some pretty good insight on reasons why people don't. And that's what we wanted to share as well. So, first let's just start with a why. Why would you participate in class? Well,
one of the first things and the most common, I think, on that list, I didn't go through your exact the Facebook list, but I believe you were talking about building relationships came up more than once, right? Where teachers participate to either build relationship with a specific student that they're struggling with, and when you get out there and chum with them on the same team, that kind of helps out. Or just in general, when you're out there participating, it creates this atmosphere that it breaks down walls and allows you to build relationship with the whole class.
Well, that's been my core core philosophy of teaching is building relationships is the number. So over a lot of our research, Stacy, we found that the number one characteristic of good teaching is building relationship. Yeah. The number one trait of good teaching is building relationship, and this is just another one of those ways to build relationships is to participate in those games, be with the students. Whether you're playing catch with them, dribbling with them, part of on their team for one of the relay races, but just being with the students.
Yeah. It also motivates them. I've noticed just an uptake in energy. I'll join in a game sometimes when, for whatever reason, the energy is low in that group. No matter what the activity is, it doesn't have to be a full-scale game. Maybe it's just a drill. But if I start jumping in with a student or a small group, whether it's jumping rope or whatever, I just go and jump 4 times in a long jump rope, and all of a sudden that group is invigorated for whatever reason. There's just something that they piggyback on the energy that you bring, and when you participate, it's easy to show that energy.
You know, and another good one that I found in that list was modeling failure.
Yeah.
And not just modeling the failure, like how to handle it when you do something wrong,
Yes.
how to handle it when you miss a basket, when you don't catch the ball, when somebody tags you, when somebody, if you're at floor hockey, somebody scores a goal on you. How do you model that adverse situation versus modeling the celebration when you score the goal, but modeling that failure? And I thought that was a really big piece so that students see, the appropriate way to handle things.
Yeah, when a kid takes a shot on goal and you're the goalie and he scores on you, you don't get upset. You point at him and go, nice shot. I mean, what a difference that is. And I know you're the teacher and they get that, but I think that is good modeling, that they can get to a point maybe where they can start actually complimenting others instead of taking it personally that they got beat or something like that. Yeah, I love that as well.
And another thing I like to just comment on, though, is when we think participation, immediately my head went to, you're participating in the 5-on-5 basketball, you're participating in the soccer game. And I think there's just different levels of participation, whether it is the 5-on-5 basketball game, or is it the warm-up game? Is it leading the stretches or the exercises, or doing those at the beginning of the class with the kids? Like you had stated, being a tagger, joining one of the relays in a relay race. It's just it seems like there's different layers of participation.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good. I think as we're having this discussion, to kind of broaden our mind out of that, where you don't have to picture yourself in the 5-on-5 basketball. This can be when you're setting up a drill. Are you, there's an odd number of students, and so you partner with the one, or you join a group of 3, or it doesn't have to be an intense game that you're joining. It's just whatever activity you have going. Maybe there's stations and you just wander from station to station and bop your nose in and participate just briefly on 1 or 2 or all of them, depending on what your goal is for the day. I'm glad you brought that up, that distinguish, to get a different picture in our head.
And I was just thinking, building a relationship. I have a challenging student that I don't quite have that relationship with yet. It's when we go play catch, you partner them up to play catch, and somehow I become that student's partner. Magically, maybe by chance, but somehow I become that student's partner. So now we're playing catch together, and I can give him that praise and that feedback and those compliments and start to build that relationship. Or another example, we were playing a pin guard hockey game today where they're hitting hockey pucks trying to knock down each other's pins. And I was playing, but what I mean by playing is I had a pin, I had a stick, but I was purposely hitting pucks towards this kid, not trying to knock his pin down, but towards this kid that never really had. He's the one that wouldn't leave his pin to go get a puck, so he never had any pucks around him to hit. But I was making sure that this student, who would normally struggle in that situation, I was making sure this student was getting pucks to hit, and that was keeping him involved in the game. And he really had no idea that I was the one that was doing that.
Right. No, those are just such unique ways, and I don't even know you could answer this, I guess. But when you first started, you might not have even had that as your ultimate purpose.
No.
But once it started, you're noticing, again, you're observing, you're not just playing a game and shut off your observation skills. You're observing, and now you're going, oh, this kid, he's one I really would like to hit more. I'm just going to make it easier for him. And you bopped a few more pucks his way. I like what you kind of said without saying it there, is you didn't join a game and then become a student. You're still the teacher. You're still observant of what's going on, but you're now in the game where you're feeling the energy of the game, and the kids can feel your energy.
Yeah, it worked out very well. No, that wasn't my purpose when I joined the game, but it became immediately clear what my purpose needed to be.
Right. Well, that brings up kind of another point, that when you're in that close to a game, whether you were kind of participating there, but in many ways you were just feeding him balls in disguise, if you want to call it that. But you do get a sense of the flow of the game a little bit more than when you're standing off. You can tell when, even more so, when tempers are starting to escalate, or they might not even be at the temper level, but you can tell the intensity is rising if you're in and amongst the game, whereas you might not feel that if you were sitting on the bleachers, just observing it. So in some ways, that's that feel it. You get. I saw one of the teachers wrote in one of the posts about you can feel the student interaction, and I was like, yeah, you can kind of. You get that energy feel of if you need to step, you might need to shut the game down, and you would feel that earlier than if you weren't participating.
You know, and take the same personal pin guard hockey game, and going into it knowing that I have a student that's going to get really frustrated and struggle when that student gets knocked down. I'm going to go set my pin right next to his, real close. And when his pin goes down, somehow my pin went down too. And we're both going to go, you know, how we play it is all you have to do is you go touch a reset button, which is a cone in the middle of the gym. You go touch the reset button and you're back in the game. So we're going to go do that together. And it's just one way to de-escalate a situation.
Yeah, no, I love that, the picture you're painting here of, again, you're a participant, but you're not a student. That kind of idea.
If you saw my artwork when I was a kid, you would not give me any compliments on a picture I was painting. I just want to point that out.
How about now? Have you improved your skills now? Would I be able to compliment you now in your painting skills?
I don't think you'd recognize anything as a drawing. So there's no Bob Ross in this room.
Oh, fun. Oh, well.
So there's a great amount of information on why people participate. And I think we hit on a lot of those pretty hard here.
Can we talk about the how you participate a little bit more?
Yeah, go ahead.
Or how that might look a little bit different, kind of sprawl that out, because we have some teachers, like I know some teacher last year, I know a good friend of mine, you know, busted his Achilles tendon, and he's out. He's not going to be in participating. He's on one leg and a scooter. There's other teachers that have a variety of health issues and they can't get in there like we're talking about. But as we talking about there's other ways to participate where you're not necessarily actually getting a hot and sweaty and digging down and getting elbow to elbow with people. Do we want to talk about a few of those ideas that kind of expand the definition of participate?
Well, certainly. And one that really comes to mind was a former colleague of ours that was a master with his words. And what I mean that he just wasn't giving feedback. He was able to give feedback in a manner that he was involved in the game. It was a very unique tap dance that this gentleman did. And I said we talked about it, how he was able to participate in the game without actually being in the game.
Yeah. And some of it, just to be more definition, some of it was sarcasm, and some people might disagree with that, but the kids loved it. They would respond right back with a quick snapshot back. So yeah, he's sitting on the side, but he's fully engaged in the game, given, to certain kids, he's gonna badger them a little bit and heckle them a little bit. And other kids, he'll be more encouraging, and other kids, there'll be just a little bit of sarcasm. But yeah, they knew there was a teacher there, and they were still feeding off the energy, even though he was sitting in a chair, and he took some heat for that from some people. But if you really watched him, he was really good at engaging with students and participating in a different way.
And it's where he was a master was at relationships, knowing each individual kid and how they would respond to any given comment or verbal cue. So it was a very unique, very, very, very unique way to participate.
Absolutely. Another idea we came up with earlier was that depending on the type of game it is, you could just be wandering around the game and giving ideas or hints or strategies. Say it's a game of capture the flag. You might pull 2-3 students together. And this is what you tried to explain them before about teamwork and some things, but if they're not getting it, now you can pull them together and say, hey, how about you 3 go together at the same time, or give them a little strategy. And that's just a whole nother way to participate. You're not pulling any flags, but you are engaged, you are participating, and you're accomplishing your purposes in and amongst them throughout the game.
We're ready to move on to the section of why you wouldn't participate. Some of these they really opened my eyes, because it's like you know them in the back of your head, but you never really think about them. And that's a hallmark of thinking PE is, just think a little bit deeper. And, one of the ones that came out pretty clear was the supervision and the facilitation piece, where if you're participating, you're not truly supervising all the kids, especially, like hockey, we had, instead of one large game, we have 6 small sided games of 4-on-4, 3-on-3, 5-on-5 type games all over the gym. So if I'm participating in any one of those games, that means there's 5 other games that I'm heavily involved in. This one game, I may be out of the corner of my eye. I'm watching these other ones, but I think it's a fair argument to say I'm not really watching those other ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And that seems like a very valid point for sure. Absolutely. And going right along with that comes the idea of lawsuits.
Yeah.
And that's right where, somebody's remark on there, I don't know if they were a principal or what, but they talked about they don't allow their teachers to participate, because that's the first question that could be asked if a student gets hurt is, where was the teacher? What was the teacher doing? And if they were participating, his view was that could set them up for a pretty easy lawsuit. So, and I know we're all think about that stuff, and we all heard horror stories. And so it's a very valid point that we really have to think about those things. If you are going to participate, you got to think through, am I still doing my responsibilities here? Am I still keeping kids safe? Am I still monitoring? I think it's a super good point to think about.
Yeah, that one, I specifically remember that one you were talking about. That caught my interest right away. The first sentence was, I instruct my teachers not to participate. I was like, oh, wait a second here. And when you read through that, then it was well written. You're like, that's interesting.
Yep.
It wasn't just a broad in case of lawsuits, but really went into detail about, when somebody gets hurt, that's the first question parents ask is, what was teacher doing?
Yep. And you can guarantee a lawyer would ask even deeper questions, probing right into that.
Oh yeah. They're not going to ask your favorite color. They're not going to ask about your art pictures that you were drawing. So
that's right.
Staying on the topic of legal issues, another one that came up was liability. And this is something that, again, it's in the back of my head, but I never truly thought of it in this way. Was, it's one thing if a student gets hurt and you're observing and watching. It's another thing when you're responsible for that student getting hurt. And let's go back to hockey, and you hit the puck and it happens to lift, or maybe it doesn't even lift. It bounces off one kid's shoe and hits another kid right in the mouth. All right. I say it's one thing if that student gets hurt as you're watching. I think it's a whole new discussion when you're the one that hit the puck.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I'm glad you distinguished between the two, because both are possible. And both we've heard horror stories about in the news, and teachers getting the raw end of that deal for sure.
Yeah, and we're just trying to put another perspective on this whole discussion. And like I say, these are things, as much as I like to participate, these things did really make me pause.
The other idea is the professionality, if that's a word, professionalism.
There we go.
Some people would define it differently. Some people define professionalism you're not being a professional if you're in there playing. Your job is to teach and assess and observe and keep control of the class in that way. And the argument is you can't do that when you're in playing. And it's a legitimate point. You really have to think through that as you're deciding if you're going to participate or how often, as to think that through. Am I behaving professionally?
In some of the last ones that came up here was just individuals' comfort level, injuries, age, different obstacles that other people face when it comes to participating with the students. And I took that in consideration, and I will say, these teachers that may have a broken Achilles or just aged, bad knees or whatever it is that doesn't allow them to participate, they're able to set up a classroom, establish a culture, build relationships, and teach skills based on their own interests and strengths. And those things might change over the course of your career. When you're fresh out of college and young, you may have a certain teaching style, but as you develop, maybe it doesn't change, but maybe it does. Yep. And I just thought that was worth noting, that at some point, maybe get in a bad car accident and your teaching style needs to change for that reason.
No, I've noticed just myself when I started hitting closer to the 50 mark, going upside down and doing handstands and cartwheels is not as pleasant as it was 7 years ago. You know, the body's just not liking it. It takes a lot longer to recover. And so I've had to change, you know, and you have to think of strategies to still be able to teach a cartwheel without actually having to do 7 or 8 every class period, which means, you know, 30 cartwheels in a day. The body just doesn't want to do that anymore. So yeah, I think it's a wise thing to think about how you might change these things and adopt new strategies. But the point, I think, can't be lost that if you're confined to a wheelchair for a time or full time, you can still teach PE. You can still participate. And as we broaden the definition of participate, you can still move yourself around. You can still engage in drills. You can still play catch with the kid. There's a lot of things we can do as PE teachers, again, with that broader definition of participate as we go. If you're comfortable, again, I don't want to change the definition to the point where we're saying everybody has to participate, but I think everybody should be engaged. Whether they participate doing exactly what the kids are doing, that could be another argument, but everybody should be engaged. I guess I would go there.
Yeah, and I saw in some of those comments where I almost think the mark was missed when they were talking about participation, where the idea of participation means you are the dominant force in that game, and you're competing at the student's level, whether a high school teacher. I got a feeling in some of those that people, and it's just like you said, broadening that definition of participation. It doesn't mean you have to be the one scoring the baskets or whatever it is. It's just with the students.
Yeah. So they feel part of it, and they feel like they can gain from the energy you bring to it, for sure.
To wrap this up, I think it's been a great discussion. It was a lot more than just the superficial information, just the superficial participation, that we were able to think deeper. And if you're somebody that participates, we hope you gain some insight into those that don't. And if you don't participate, we hope you gain some insight from those that do.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Thinking PE.
Connect with us on Facebook and Twitter at Thinking PE. Find us on all your favorite podcast providers by searching Thinking PE. For more resources and videos, go to www.thinkingpe.com. Thanks for listening.